All right, let's get right to our first guest. It is Elizabeth Kucinich. The Great Betrayal is the name of her book, The Battle Against Making America Healthy Again. You can follow Elizabeth. Her Substack is at Elizabeth Kucinich/posts, Kucinich, and it's EJ Kucinich, Kucinich. Be careful in the spelling. EJ Kucinich on X. Elizabeth, thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Wonderful to be with you.
So, I know the people over there at the HHS. I know they're working hard. Where have they jumped the shark from your standpoint?
Oh, I love what HHS is up to, and, the many attempts to truly make America healthy again. I'm really interested in the rest of government. So, we have a very prominent secretary who's been leading the charge to make America healthy again from HHS. But it's really important that we look now to see what the rest of the administration is doing with respects to either increasing or decreasing our chemical exposure and putting money behind things that we should or shouldn't have. And very sadly, what we've seen in the last budget reconciliation is a massive increase in government subsidies, 130 billion going to the most toxic chemical crops that there are out there. We see a big push within the Farm Bill and within other pieces of legislation for a chemical liability shield. That means that we won't have any recourse, just like with the vaccine liability shield, we won't have any recourse with regards to the negative effects of agrochemicals. And the other one is really advancing something called the EATS Act. And the EATS Act comes in many forms and has been fought over many Congresses. But what this does is removes all of the local and state laws that are protecting people from exposure to chemicals. Let's say your town might say you can only spray chemicals within a certain distance of school. EATS Act at federal level will overturn all of those betterments and mean that people will have greater exposure to chemicals when really we're trying to protect people from those. So we've got the EATS Act preventing local authorities and states from helping their people. And then we have the chemical liability shield saying, well, you're not going to be able to have any legal recourse if you are harmed. So I want to kind of parse this out a little bit. Now, is this Brooke Rollins' department? This is the Department of Agriculture? Is she the one overseeing all that? We've got the Department of Agriculture is one side, absolutely, with Brooke Rollins, and also inside Congress itself. And, very sadly, both political parties have somewhat of an undue influence by chemical companies.
Okay. And I want to parse out, again, I want to get very specific. Now, it seems to me that some of the great emphasis of HHS has been on exposure to chemicals ingested in and amongst food sources, right? Absolutely. Sort of what are we eating and what is it doing to us? It sounds like you're talking about people who live and work in and around where these crops are sprayed. Am I getting that wrong?
Well, so, obviously people who are farm workers, our farmers have the greatest exposure to agrochemicals because they're applying them. But of course, we're also ingesting them too. So, it's the farm workers.
Because those are two very different, those seem like very, very different things. Because theoretically, we've been very concerned about stuff, stuck in the middle of food that we can't get out of it, like dyes and GMOs and things. It seems to me that if we wash our vegetables and our fruit, we're gonna limit our exposure to stuff that the farm workers and the communities can't just, they're breathing the air. So
yeah,
am I right here or no?
I wish it were as easy that we could just wash it all off. Of course, you wash it all off, it goes somewhere. But no, we can't. These things are endemic inside the foods themselves. And when you look at genetically engineered crops, there are two particular traits to those crops. One is pesticide producing, where it's literally part of the crop itself and you eat it. And the other is herbicide and pesticide resisting, so you can spray them directly on. Either way, whichever it is that you're consuming, you are increasing your ingestion of those things. So we've got this HHS is looking at the ingredients and the ultra-processed foods, which is highly commendable. And the other side of health is we really have to look at the actual process that gets food onto our table in the first place.
Okay. And I'm guessing it seems kind of difficult. I understand why they're so challenged, because we don't run as a country on little French farms that are milking the cows. We have gigantic operations in this country. And in a weird way, we'd be throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Do you have a plan for how we manage all this?
Well,
I assume they feel they need it in order to deliver the crops.
From a federal level, of course, there's been major attacks on the family farm. The foundation of any kind of economy is our producer class, and it is our farm worker, which is, our farmer, who is the foundation of our economy here still, and the foundation of our health, ever so important. Sadly, from a regulatory and a governmental standpoint, we've been exposed to policies that have really advanced, get big or get out. And because we're using crops and highly expensive processes such as agriculture, which is based on having to bring pesticides and herbicides and artificial fertilizers to the farms, within cropping systems that are actually not supporting the microbiome of the soil. I mean, you understand obviously very deeply the microbiome of the gut and how important that is. The same is true of the soil.
I know the soil too.
The microbiome.
Listen,
of the soil.
I was part of, I'm smiling because I was part of the ecology movement in the 70s. And this was one of our big things.
Exactly.
We were very, acid rain. Do you remember acid rain back in the day? Have you heard about
and we
acid
still
rain?
have it.
I know, but we were apoplectic about it back then.
Yeah.
And we also
now we have
predicting
glyphosate
famine.
rain and atrazine rain and all of these other agrochemicals that are literally in our hydrological cycle. But it's really.
But isn't glyphosate out? Isn't it out now, or is it still in the cycle?
It's the largest, one of the largest used herbicides that there is out there. It's not out at all. There's just a discussion about it. But this is the thing, we need to be able to, and you too, to bring on as many guests as possible to help to educate legislators that there's a system of agriculture that advances chemical thinking, and there's a system of agriculture that advances biological and understands the ecology, and that is organic. It's regenerative organic, and we know there are thousands of farmers in America who know how to grow with rotations, increasing the resilience of our crops, reducing the numbers of herbicides and pesticides because it's simply not warranted within those systems, and that build as you understand, the importance of the immunity of the body. The farm field has the same kind of immunity too, depending on how we farm it. And we have the idea of intervention in the human body. The interventionist part of that in the farm system is the chemicals, and it is broken the ecological immunity of our lands. And there's a way to heal that too.
I get it.
We just need for USDA and also EPA to look into that more seriously.
I mean, two questions. I mean, one is I hear a lot about regenerative farming. I thought it was kind of coming on. We have a partner here, Paleo Valley, who's very involved with the regenerative farming. I have two questions. A, how much of the farming is presently regenerative? Is it a tiny percentage? I really don't know. And then how did you get into this field?
Thank you. Well, it is a very small percentage in America that is regenerative organic. And one of the big reasons for that is that farmers grow to basically the formula of government, and government subsidies are sponsoring the crops that are most chemical intensive. They're incentivizing systems of agriculture, which really reduce the resiliency of our farm system. And then the government goes and supports with crop insurance. This says, okay, you've broken your farm system, you've made your system less resilient. We'll come in and we'll save you there as well. And this isn't for the farmer. It's not for the consumer. It's not for the nutrition density of the food. This is really a giveaway to the large agrochemical sector. It's to big tractor, big seed, big chemical. And many of those companies are not American anyway. I just don't understand why that's, why we're really proponents of these kinds of policies. And as my own background, I was the director of policy at the Center for Food Safety in Washington, D.C., where we looked at chemicals in agriculture, drugs in meat, genetic engineering. I was the government affairs director at the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, where we looked at the prevention and reversal of disease through plant-based nutrition. I'm a former policy chair at the Rodale Institute, which is the oldest organic research institute in the United States, and was instrumental also in helping to, in that role, create the ROC, which is the Regenerative Organic certification, which uses organic as the baseline, but then adds on to it additional things, not just the absence of bad chemicals, but the existence and the presence of soil health, animal welfare, and a whole suite of other things. So when you buy regenerative organic, really it's advancing truly regenerative organic agriculture and also the culture of regeneration, which is ultimately to support life.
And so the obvious question is then, why are we not getting you back inside government? Is that not a place where you feel you can continue to have an impact, or is not as much of an impact as being outside and rattling the sabers? Or you tell me.
Very happy to be anywhere where I can be an agent to truly support, the call for life in this country. And our food system, our health system, looking at it in an integrated fashion is absolutely essential. And, MAHA is a great rally cry. And now we need to make sure that the administration doesn't only use it for polling, but really puts the policies behind it. And we need to make sure that the appointees that come into the administration do know what they're doing. I mean, it's very frightening to have someone like Kunkler be put into the EPA, being in charge of the chemicals that are coming into the system, being the biggest proponent of them from the private sector. So, this rotational door needs to start to close.
Yeah. And a lot of the people in the whole MAHA world are very concerned about animals and vaccination. What is your sort of assessment of what's going on there? We have a recent release from the CDC. I don't know if you all saw that. Caleb, you could probably find it. Bird flu, no longer a problem. Shocking. I've been predicting that the whole way. And to contain whatever bird flu there is, standard infection control techniques that we have used for the last 45 years. And by the way, as recommended by the Great Barrington Declaration under a different name. But I'm going to let you talk about vaccines in animals. Where are we with that?
Well, I mean, let's look at really boosting the immune system of the body, be it an animal or a human being. We need to make sure that the animals are living in a condition which gives them ability to have fresh air, go outside, be able to move, eat good food, have social distancing, not be completely crowded and not be able to move, not be fed ultra-processed foods, genetically engineered grains. I mean, all these things are the way that we are housing our animals in these industrial systems is, of course, a breeding ground for, diabolical amounts of all different kinds of diseases that go through there. And we're using so much, not just looking at the vaccines, but we're using so many antibiotics within our animal community in factory farms that we're causing for them not to be working in human beings. So what was the government, this current administration's response to the avian flu thing a few months ago? It was actually to advance legislation that would actually bring more animals into containment. And it was to redirect $1 billion for really healthy food and for local food access, to redirect that to vaccine development for chickens, essentially. So exactly the opposite of what needs to happen. So MAHA is an amazing rally cry. Now we need the policies and the people who really know how to bring that into government. It is common sense, and we need common sense policy.
And I am shocked. We for 2 decades, 90s and 2000s, were so gravely concerned about antibiotic resistance. Oh, don't prescribe antibiotics. Don't prescribe them. There's going to be resistance. And then all of a sudden we're giving them to every animal on Earth, even without infection, just giving them all the time. And I've not heard one peep about the microbiome since all that started, which is also kind of a tell, isn't it?
Absolutely. And you look at how many antibiotics, I think it's like 80% of the antibiotics consumed in this country are used prophylactically in our animal populations, just so that you can keep them in confined, horrible cages and at high density. And it is absolutely eroding the hospital's ability to be able to treat patients. And we're really, removing a tool from the toolkit by doing this. But of course, those antibiotics do 2 things within the animals, not just allowing for us to perpetuate a diabolical, horrendous a factory farming system, but it also that increases their weight. And when we look at the kinds of drugs that are being put into animals now, there are 700 different kinds of drugs that animals can have, 450 of them just used very broadly. Many of them are growth promoters, and other countries, ban them and not allowed to have them. But when we look at where those drugs are stored in the animals, in the residue, it's in the fats, it's in the offal, it's in places where then other sectors of, nutrition are saying we should be eating more of these things. But we have to make sure that animals are grown in pasture, in organic systems, eating proper food, not grain from industrial operations. And so to be able to speak to you, it's wonderful because I know that you understand this whole systems approach to health, and it has to go back to the land, and it has to go to the animal and obviously the human animal.
Well, I'm glad you're there fighting the fight. Before we wrap up, tell us what else people are going to read in The Great Betrayal.
Well, actually, I'm very glad you said it was a book, but it was actually an article that I wrote on my Substack, because I know I have to have the book out there. But the three things
I thought it was a book.
It was a very long article, but the three things that we need to make sure we remember is that if you really care about the food you eat, make sure you buy organic, because it's the best standard that we have out there. All across the United States, there are other labels which are great: regenerative organic, real organic project, and obviously biodynamic is amazing. And the two key pieces of legislation and proposals that we need to make sure get kept out of the administration, out of the Farm Bill, and out of every other bill that they might move them in. One is the EATS Act, which prevents states and local authorities from being able to protect us from exposure to chemicals and all different agricultural moves that might harm us and animals and others. And then the other is to really make sure that chemical liability shields are not allowed to either be advanced at a state level, and very sadly 2 states have advanced them, or at a federal level. Now, we have heard from Secretary Rollins and the chairs of the agriculture committees that they like both of those pieces of legislation and both of those proposals. So we need to make sure that they don't advance them.
I was going to say, I don't know if you've ever met Brooke Rollins, but I met her before she was in her current position, a cabinet position, and I found her to be a very bright, very motivated, very concerned, like wanting to do good. So I would be surprised if you didn't have a sympathetic ear there.
Yeah, I would love to be able to, speak directly with her. I know how aware she is and how she is really hungry to learn about all these things. But, Washington is a place where everybody will come with a proposal and it will sound really reasonable, but behind it will be something very dark. And so, yeah, I really hope that, some people were able to reach her and, change her mind on this.
Well, let's get you in there so you can have her ear directly as some sort of policy creation or creator. Elizabeth, where do you want people to go besides we have X? Anywhere else you want people to find you? It's Elizabeth Kucinich. I said somewhere it said wait a minute, Elizabeth hang on, you have to tell me what Elizabeth H. Kucinich? Am I saying that? No, Elizabeth Kucinich. And somewhere it said E.J. Kucinich. Is that an old one or something?
That's my X account. No, that's the X account, which I'm horrendous on social media and I should really start up. But I write quite lengthy articles on Substack at the Kucinich Report. So I would be posting a lot more there.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us, and keep fighting.
Thank you so much.
You got it. Elizabeth Kucinich, everybody, let's find a way to get her back in a driver's seat in Washington, because it's astonishing to me that somebody with her fund of knowledge is not right there, chewing on Brooke Rollins' ear, or somebody in that sort of zone in the agricultural department.